I am Reed, just a normal 27-year-old guy talking about building wealth and getting your life together in your 20s. My dad's been divorced 3 times. He is high income, diligent, and good with money. But at 50, he had to start over. This proves that the biggest wealth killer isn't he. Usually your expenses. It is those life decisions that silently drain your bank account. Today, we re-talking about the wealth killers you need to avoid in your 20s and 30s. I guarantee you haven't heard some of these on any other financial channel. The first wealth killer I want to talk about today is staying in the wrong city. This is such an overlooked topic, but your geographic location. It is one of the most important financial decisions you can make if you grew up somewhere without many industries that align with your career goals, or if the median salary in your city is significantly lower than what you could earn elsewhere. Staying there, that is just costing you money. A city conducive to building wealth usually has a few characteristics. First, it has excellent career prospects. Second, it has high quality talent. You want to be around people who are as ambitious as you are. With similar goals, choosing to start your career in a high-paying city is a crucial decision because in the long run, the power of compound interest will help you accumulate significant wealth. Moreover, your first starting salary will become the core benchmark for all your future salary negotiations. Let us make an assumption. Say you live in Kansas City right now. The median individual annual income there is about $69,000. But if you choose to move to a larger city like Austin or Seattle, the local median income would significantly increase. For example, the median household annual income in Austin is $90,000, while in San Francisco it exceeds $135,000. As long as you can effectively control your daily expenses, you can absolutely leverage the salary differences between different regions to successfully achieve what is called geographic arbitrage. A few years ago, I visited a gold factory in Switzerland. Interestingly, it was very close to the Italian border. What is even more amazing is that many workers in the factory were from Italy. Just across the border, they wanted to work in Switzerland because the wages there were much higher. It is like many Italian workers specifically go to Switzerland to earn very high local wages, and then return to their relatively much cheaper homes in Italy to live. This is an extreme example, but it is the same principle of geographic arbitrage. Another underrated factor here is your network. I truly believe that how much money you can earn largely depends on the quality of your network, the people you meet, the opportunities you encounter, and the resources others recommend to you. All of these will be highly dependent on where you actually live. Once you've achieved success, you can always choose to move back home, but trying to develop a career in a city lacking opportunities, that is an absolute wealth killer. Unfortunately, many young people in their 20s or early 30s don't realize this. The second invisible wealth killer is reserving non-income, generating emergency funds. Many of you watching this video might fall into this trap because you want to manage your finances properly. In a typical emergency fund, you want to save 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. Purely for unforeseen circumstances, this is just in case you lose your job, you have some money to fall back on, to help you pay bills, maintain your lifestyle, find a new job, and so on. But I personally know some people who put $80,000, $100,000, or even $167,000 into high-yield savings accounts. Simply because, first, it makes them feel more secure, and second, they like having a huge buffer between themselves and a catastrophic sudden event. But if you keep 16 to 24 months or even more of living expenses entirely in cash, this excess money will cost you a heavy opportunity cost. Assuming your monthly expenses are $4,000, then a 6-month emergency fund is $24,000, and 16 months is $64,000. The difference here is $40,000. If this extra $40,000 is just sitting in a high-yield savings account with an annual interest rate of 3.5%, instead of being invested in the market with a return of about 8 to 9%, it could cost you approximately $145,000 over 20 years. The key is to understand how much you actually need. After saving enough for a 6-month emergency fund, insisting on keeping too much cash often reflects a subconscious scarcity mindset. There is nothing wrong with pursuing financial security, but don't overdo it. Next, we're going to talk about a heavy topic that might be uncomfortable, and that is divorce. Let me state up front, friends, I am not married yet. I am not qualified to lecture anyone on relationship issues, but I have watched my dad go through 3 divorces. As I mentioned earlier, I witnessed 2 of those divorces firsthand. Whether it was his divorce from my mom or the breakdown of his 3rd marriage, each divorce significantly set him back financially. He often tells me, son, if I hadn't gotten divorced, I'd definitely be much richer than I am now. This truly proves that choosing the right partner is absolutely one of the most important financial decisions of your life. The U.S. divorce rate ranks 6th globally. What is even more surprising is that the divorce rates for 2nd and 3rd marriages are as high as 60% and 73% respectively. This clearly indicates that people with previous divorce experience have an even higher risk of divorce. When they remarry, you might think that since the divorce rate is so high, everyone should naturally sign a prenuptial agreement to protect themselves. But that is not the case, as only 15% of married couples reportedly sign prenuptial agreements. The main reasons for divorce usually include a lack of commitment from both parties, infidelity, and long-term financial conflict and pressure. Additionally, the proportion of early marriages is also very high. So why do we say divorce is such a deadly wealth killer? Obviously, divorce itself is quite expensive. It can easily cost you more than $20,000. But in my opinion, the hidden costs of divorce accumulated are actually much greater. For example, dividing assets, a breakup means having to refinance a mortgage at a high interest rate, or being forced to sell a house in a sluggish market, resulting in heavy losses. Even retirement accounts have to be split, requiring complex court procedures. If you withdraw early, you might also face taxes and penalties. There are also moving expenses and the division of various assets, all of which are emotionally draining. If either of you started a company during the marriage, the situation becomes extremely complicated. If you add all the hidden costs to the normal divorce costs generated through lawyer fees, it could cost you $50,000 to $100,000, sometimes even more. If you have many assets, ultimately, marriage is actually the most impactful financial decision you can make in your life. Choosing the right partner is crucial, otherwise a bad marriage could instantly destroy all the wealth you've painstakingly accumulated. The next wealth killer we were going to talk about is that vanity of trying to appear rich. There is an old saying in the financial world that has been around for decades: keeping up with the Joneses. This saying has persisted because it describes one of the most destructive behaviors we all fall victim to, and that behavior is trying to keep up with your friends throughout life. It is natural to compare your financial achievements with others' superficial possessions, like your neighbors, your friends, or just Instagram users. Once you fall into the trap of comparing yourself to others, you've already completely lost. What you see on social media are often just carefully curated highlights of others. As long as the other person cares about their public image, you never truly see the trivial and unpresentable aspects behind their real life. The new car you see might be leased. The designer brands borrowed. Those luxurious apartments that look glamorous on Instagram might consume 60% of that person's after tax income. In Texas, they call this a $30,000 millionaire, a concept I've actually mentioned in other videos, and this is exactly the type of person we want to avoid becoming. These are people with an annual income of only $30,000, but they insist on flaunting their wealth and lifestyle like millionaires. Just like those who go to nightclubs, spend all their money to book VIP booths, and then can even afford a drink. That is a $30,000 millionaire. The lesson here is people who flaunt their wealth often have no money at all, while discreet people, they are the truly rich ones. I personally believe that as long as you focus on accumulating wealth for a long time, stay in your own lane, and live within your means, you'll definitely be richer than those who blindly compare themselves. In my opinion, another big killer in your 20s and 30s is focusing only on salary and ignoring equity, especially when you have the opportunity to get shares. This is particularly crucial if you work at a startup or a company that offers equity compensation. But it is also important in a general sense. Many current positions, especially in public companies, startups, or companies preparing to go public, they include equity as part of your total compensation during salary negotiations. You usually have some flexibility. You can choose a high base salary with fewer options, or more options with a lower base salary. Many people choose a high base salary because they want to hold cash, which gives them more cash flow, perhaps allowing them to rent a better apartment or slightly improve their quality of life. The key is that once these options successfully vest, their value could even be worth 10 years of your salary income, although this depends on the company's development, and I understand not everyone can work for a giant. In most cases, if a medium to large company offers you options and you are optimistic about the company, I personally think you should take more options and less cash, because options at least have room for appreciation. Of course, there is an important prerequisite here. You must do your due diligence on the company itself, see if it really has a future. If your friend just started a new startup in their garage, you might want to think twice about the risks involved, whether you want cash or options. When estimating the value of your potential options, I would do two things. First, I would figure out what percentage of the company's total shares my options represent. If the company gives you 10,000 shares, that number means nothing unless you know the actual total outstanding shares. But if you do the math and figure out how much your shares are worth in terms of equity, you can get the total number of shares from HR or legal. This way you can figure out your percentage of ownership. Then you can proceed to the second step, which is to figure out how much your company is currently worth, or how much it will be worth if there is a liquidation or an IPO in the future. If you own 0.1% of the company, and the company eventually goes public with, say, a $100 million valuation, then your options are worth 0.1% of that, which is $100,000. If you need more practice with this, you might want to watch the show Shark Tank, because they actually discuss valuation figures quite often. I think the more you watch, the more you'll naturally understand through repetition. The next wealth killer is adopting a wait and see attitude when investing. If you are a regular viewer of my channel, you've probably heard me talk about this concept. If we keep a wait and see attitude in investing, that is absolutely the most stable way to not make money. Let us assume the growth of investing $10,000 in the SP 500 index from 1996 to 2025. You can see that if you remain fully invested, your balance would exceed $192,000. But if you only missed the best 10 days during this period, your returns would decrease by 56%. And the chart would actually get worse. Therefore, if you missed the best 20 days, your returns would decrease by 74%. If you missed the best 30 days, your returns would decrease by 84%. Your investment growth depends on whether you are in the market during the best performing days. So you really can't afford to miss the peak periods unless you are close to retirement and need to preserve capital. You should try to hold long term rather than timing the market. I find that many people always hold cash or wait for a market correction. I have many friends who are like this, but I think if their returns can even beat inflation, then their purchasing power will be eroded by inflation itself. For whatever reason, if you don't want to invest at least when interest rates are good, you should put your cash in a high-yield savings account. Speaking of not so good things, my next big wealth killer is what is called sunk cost loyalty. This wealth killer refers to staying in a job for too long, just because of comfort, familiarity, or liking the colleagues you work with. But loyalty can actually be a double-edged sword, because if you stay at a company for too long and they only give you, say, a 3 to 5% raise each year, you are simply not going to make much money, especially if your starting salary was low. Let's say after graduating college, you got a job at Marriott International. For example, your starting salary is $60,000 a year. Simply put, they give you a 3% cash raise every 2 years. You work there for 10 years, and after these 10 years, your annual salary has only increased to $70,000. That is not a very big increase, especially if you work somewhere for 10 years. Personally, I am not the type of person who runs into the boss's office asking for a raise. I was taught from a young age that having a job is already lucky, especially since I graduated during the 2008 financial recession. I believe many of you might feel the same way, especially with layoffs happening across the US right now. No one wants to upset their employer, but you need to understand that companies usually only give you the minimum salary to maintain the status quo. If you don't actively fight for your raises or what you deserve, then you are simply wasting your huge potential value. Perhaps you can try another strategy to escape this wealth killer, which is to change jobs every few years, especially early in your career. If you can switch jobs, you can reset your base salary during negotiations. This often leads to a significant increase in salary, according to a study by LendingTree. Job hoppers' average income increase exceeds 11%, and in some cases, it is even over 30%. The core idea here is that you need to change jobs every 1 to 2 years, so you can either switch to a similar position with a pay raise or a similar salary. With a promotion, either way, as long as you keep doing this, constantly improving your position or salary. By the time you are in your 30s, your salary will have increased multiple times, and your wealth can continue to grow on its own. The next wealth killer we were going to talk about today, you are definitely very familiar with. It is debt, especially high interest debt, and even more so if you are stuck in bad debt. Of course, borrowing money is fine. In some cases, I also believe not all debt is bad. I think taking out a mortgage to buy a house or taking out student loans for a degree that will have a return in the future. These are planned uses of leverage. In these cases, you borrow money to acquire assets that can appreciate or generate income for you in the future. So in these cases, I think this kind of debt is quite good. But in the US, the problem lies with high interest debt, especially credit card debt or any debt with an interest rate over 10%. As of 2026, the average annualized interest rate for credit cards is 22.11%. This means that for a $10,000 credit card debt, you need to pay approximately $185 in interest each month. If you have to pay this interest,